Hi, and welcome to our National Park series. We're going to look at many of the most special and protected areas around the United States that millions have enjoyed visiting for more than 100 years. Since President Woodrow Wilson signed them into law back in 1916. This law created the National Park Service to operate the parks and to bring them all together under one authority. So, just what does it take to become a national park? Well, in order to receive this protected status, the area has to contain unique geographical features and landforms, unusual ecosystems, natural beauty, and recreational opportunities. In all, there are 59 national parks, and we'll look at many of them region by region across the country. National preserves are a lot like national parks, but in the preserves, they may allow activities like hunting and fishing. Also, there are significant areas of our country which are named national monuments. These are protected because they contain great historical or cultural importance. All of these protective categories, along with others, are overseen by the National Park Service. Today, we'll have a look at the National Park Service in the northern part of the western region of the U.S. Join us as we explore and celebrate the unique landforms, ecosystems, and natural beauty of this area. We'll be visiting Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and Colorado. Here we are in the state of Washington, visiting the first of 3 national parks. This one called North Cascades National Park. It's given the name North Cascades because it's at the northern border of the USA. With British Columbia, Canada, its nearby neighbor. The name Cascades because it is also the northern portion of the Cascade Mountain Range, which stretches from British Columbia to California. This park is unique for 2 different reasons. The first, because it is called the American Alps. The other Alps are in Switzerland, on the European continent. The second reason for its uniqueness is because it is called the North Cascades National Park Service Complex, divided into 3 units: North Cascades National Park, Ross Lake, and Lake Chelan National Recreational Areas. This park actually contains even more glaciers than Glacier National Park in Montana. Mountain climbing in North Cascades is a favorite for serious climbers. And backpackers with permits can enjoy overnight trips to take in the splendor around the clock. This area, near the Skagit River, may host the largest population of bald eagles in the lower 48 states, estimated at up to 300 eagles at a time. Lake Chelan National Recreation Area houses the small community of Skowhegan, which can be reached only by trail, seaplane, or by boat. Lake Chelan, besides boasting that it's the 3rd deepest lake in North America, is also 50 miles long. Next, we visit Mount Rainier National Park, so named because of the most beautifully, episodically active volcano you may ever see. This huge volcano has erupted thousands of times, though it is currently dormant. The volcano is the mountain, Mount Rainier. They are one and the same. It is unique that 26 named glaciers are a part of a possible, hot, boiling over volcanic mountain, forming the greatest single-peak glacier system in the lower 48 states. You're a hiker? Well, Wonderland Trail is the hike for you. You may walk part or all 93 miles around the entire Mount Rainier, viewing the summit, which means the top of the mountain, the glaciers, and vivid wildflower meadows. Another unique aspect of Mount Rainier is that it is just so visible. There are no other mountains or volcanoes around it. It is alone to view. Believe it or not, you can see it from 100 miles away. The local people that live near it call it the mountain. No other name is necessary. Captain George Vancouver was sailing into the nearby Puget Sound way back in the year 1792 and eyed this gorgeous mountain. He named the mountain after his friend, British Admiral Peter Rainier. As it turned out, Admiral Rainier was never able to see this famous mountain named after him. President Teddy Roosevelt, so important in the establishment of many of our national parks, was again instrumental in declaring most of the Olympic Peninsula a nature preserve. Then in 1939, years later, this area officially became Olympic National Park, the third and last park we'll visit in Washington State. The park, unique because its million-acre landscape has such variety. Have you ever wanted to visit the state of Maine to see the rugged Rocky Coast? Or the snow-capped peaks of the Rocky Mountains in the state of Colorado? Or what about the far-off land of the Amazon rainforest? Well, you're in luck. You can see all of the above landforms in one fabulous national park, Olympic National Park in Washington State. In fact, these three distinct ecosystems have become an international biosphere reserve. Olympic National Park earned the honor of becoming a World Heritage Site. Visiting these three landscapes or ecosystems in one park is so much fun and so interesting. Starting with the rugged, rocky Pacific Coast, it has 73 miles of protected coastal habitat, complete with tide pools, gray whales, and harbor seals. You can walk the boardwalk to the beach, looking for the rugged rock towers called sea stacks. The second ecosystem to visit is the temperate rainforest in the west of Olympic National Park. The Hoh River Valley is one of the finest remaining examples in the U.S. of a temperate rainforest, second only in rainfall to the island of Kauai in the state of Hawaii. An average of 170 inches of rain can be counted on, making the old-growth forests in the Olympic National Park unbelievably lush and a happy habitat for many, many different creatures. The third ecosystem or landscape to visit in the park is the Olympic Mountains. The park's highest mountain is Mount Olympus. It was so named in 1788 by Captain John Meares, an English explorer, who thought the mountain equal to the legendary home of the Greek gods. Most of its precipitation is from falling snow and reaches more than 200 inches per year. The next place we'll visit is Crater Lake National Park in the state of Oregon. This, one of the most beautiful destinations in the West, was designated a national park by President Theodore Roosevelt in the early 1900s. The deepest, bluest water is what makes Oregon's Crater Lake National Park so unique. In fact, Crater Lake is the deepest in the entire United States and the deepest lake in the world that is completely above sea level. How deep? Almost 2,000 feet. How blue? Blue enough to be compared to a brilliant blue sapphire, sparkling like a gem all the year round. Dating back close to 8,000 years ago, an incredibly gigantic, powerful eruption of a volcano occurred. It was called Mount Mazama and is part of the Cascade Range of mountains. This gigantic eruption is said to have been 42 times more powerful than the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. The uppermost 5,000 feet of the volcano collapsed after the eruption, forming a caldera. A caldera is the large bowl shape left behind when a major eruption leads to the collapse of the mouth of a volcano. It took about 250 years for the empty crater to fill with melted snow, forming the natural wonder of Crater Lake. At its widest, it's 6 miles across. There is an island in the lake called Wizard Island. It's really a volcanic cone that built up over time. It too has a crater at its top. So this makes it a crater within a crater. The Klamath Indians, the local Native Americans, believe the lake and its surroundings to be sacred ground. Now, making our way across to Idaho, we're going to visit the Craters of the Moon National Monument. It's also a national preserve. It was formed starting 15,000 years ago, when the rivers of lava rose to the Earth's surface from a series of deep cracks in the Earth. They eventually cooled and formed these lava fields. Craters of the Moon, covering 60,000 acres at an average altitude of 6,000 feet, is part of the Snake River volcanic plain in southern Idaho. President Calvin Coolidge described this area as a wild and scenic landscape particular to itself. An early exploration group led by Captain Benjamin Bonneville back in 1833 described the area as a desolate and awful waste where no grass grows, nor water runs, where there is nothing to be seen but lava. The cinder cones and large areas of glassy black stone actually house a wide variety of animal and plant life. In fact, if you visit in May and June, you may be able to see abundant wildflowers. Animals like this chipmunk can also be seen here. Birds live here too, like Idaho's own state bird, the mountain bluebird. It has been so well named that Craters of the Moon has actually been the practice grounds for American astronauts. Here we are, visiting Glacier National Park, also a World Heritage Site in the state of Montana. It's incredibly large, well over 1 million acres of pristine wilderness. It's called Glacier National Park because it actually has glaciers. It's also Montana's only national park. What are glaciers? They're large accumulations of snow and ice that have built up over thousands of years. And they shift and move under their own weight very slowly. The mountains here are part of the dramatic Rocky Mountain Range, which makes this park extra rugged and extremely wild. In and around the mountains, this park has more than 700 miles of hiking and horseback riding trails. These trails take us along the many lakes, rivers, and streams here in the park. Along the way, we might see grizzly bears, bighorn sheep, wolves, and maybe even mountain lions. So, if this is the type of adventure you'd be interested in, then Glacier National Park is calling your name. This is the beautiful Lake McDonald, Glacier National Park's largest lake. In the park, there is a road called Going to the Sun Road. What a descriptive name. It is said to be one of the most beautiful drives in all of North America. This fantastically engineered road began in the year 1921 and took 11 years to complete. Since they had to carve through the mountains to create the road, we can see why it took so long to build. It even crosses the Continental Divide at Logan Pass in the northern Rocky Mountains. What makes this park unique from others is not just the Rocky Mountains, but its glaciers. The bad news is that they are in danger of melting away. Because of global warming and climate change, they and many other glaciers are disappearing. It is thought that we have until the year 2030 or 2030 to make all the difference so that we can continue to see the 27 remaining glaciers in the park. Colorado has 4 national parks, each unique from each other. The 4 parks are Mesa Verde, the Great Sand Dunes, Rocky Mountain, and the Black Canyon of the Gunnison. Mesa Verde has historically been linked with the ancient Puebloan people, dating as far back as 1300 BCE. They were a native Stone Age cultural group who lived semi-nomadic lives until they settled down here. Eventually, they created these apartment-like complexes and structures made from stone, adobe mud, and other materials. Some dwellings were carved right into the sides of the limestone canyon walls. The ancient Puebloans survived using a combination of hunting, gathering, and subsistence farming. Mesa Verde is a very important archaeological site and also became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1978. Here at Mesa Verde, you can take a guided tour of Cliff Palace, the largest cliff dwelling in North America. Archaeologists believe that Cliff Palace was largely a social site and was often used for ceremonies. It's thought that about 125 people lived here, but many, many more spent time here because of its important role as a social hub. These round pits are called kivas, and they lead to underground chambers that were used for ceremonies and meetings. This square tower is the tallest structure here at Mesa Verde and has been partially rebuilt by the National Park Service, roughly to its former height. Balcony House is another cliff dwelling built on a ledge, this one facing east. People can visit here with a guide. After climbing a 32-foot ladder, Balcony House was home to about 80 people. Longhouse is the second largest of these cliff villages with about 150 rooms. After being abandoned around 1300 CE, it was rediscovered in the late 1800s. Spruce Tree House is the third largest of the villages, and because of its protected location, it's very well preserved. Now, you can pretend you're in the middle of the Sahara Desert in Africa. But no, you're in the USA, in yet another unique natural spot in the country, the Great Sand Dunes National Park and Preserve. Can you believe that these sand dunes cover more than 30 square miles and are as much as 750 feet high? These dunes are popular with hikers and other adventure seekers like sandboarders and sand sledders. The Great Sand Dunes have been protected since 1932, but only in the year 2000 did Congress designate the area to become a national park and national preserve. There are also nature trails to explore where hikers can leave the dunes and spot a host of animals, like these deer. In studying the U.S. geography and its natural borders made from large and important landforms, you may hear the expression east or west of the Rockies. This refers to the huge, stunning, and important mountain range called the Rocky Mountains. In fact, a complete national park has been named and protected by the U.S. government, called the Rocky Mountain National Park. An extremely popular park, you can view the scenery by car or by hiking its many trails to view thundering mountain waterfalls and rushing streams, alpine forests with glacier-sculpted cliffs, or lovely valleys to spy the bighorn sheep and elk where grazing the land is a delicious treat. Besides the grandeur of the Rocky Mountains themselves, the Continental Divide makes this national park even more unique. The Continental Divide is a designation where all the water west of the Rockies flows to the Pacific Ocean, and to the east of the Rockies flows to the Atlantic Ocean or Gulf of Mexico. Amazing! The last of the 4 national parks to explore in Colorado is the Black Canyon of the Gunnison. As early as 1933, the Black Canyon of the Gunnison was established as a national monument, but it wasn't until the year 1999 that it became a nationally protected park. The Black Canyon got its name because you look into the deep, deep, steep, and narrow canyon, all you see is darkness. In parts of the canyon, the sun only shines for 33 minutes a day out of 24 hours. But what about the rest of the park's name? What is, or more correctly, who is Mr. Gunnison? Well, it turns out that it was Captain John Williams Gunnison who wrote the first official account of the Black Canyon in 1853, He was exploring the area, searching for a route from St. Louis to San Francisco. The canyon and river, which flows rapidly at the base of the canyon, are both named after Captain Gunnison. Then, some 30 years later, in 1882, thanks to his original writings of the area, the first passenger train passed through the Black Canyon of the Gunnison. It was Mr. Rudyard Kipling, author of The Jungle Book, who described his 1889 train ride through the canyon. We entered a gorge, remote from the sun, where the rocks were 2,000 feet sheer, where a rock-splintered river roared and howled just 10 feet below a track. There was a glory and a wonder and a mystery about the mad ride, which I felt keenly. What is your experience visiting the Black Canyon of the Gunnison on this virtual field trip? We hope it was a thrilling one. Thank you for joining us on this fabulous virtual field trip through part 1 of the Western States National Parks. We can hardly wait to have you travel with us again. See you next in part 2, when we'll visit the national parks in the states of Wyoming, Utah, Nevada, and California. See you again soon.